everybody. My dad thinks his podcast is amazing, so please subscribe, give it 5 stars or whatever, and maybe he'll finally stop talking about it. Anyways, welcome to Sobriety.
Welcome to the show. I'm Ryan. This is Jess. We are sober as fuck. Before we get to today's guest, just want to make sure and remind everybody to please make sure you're subscribing, commenting, sharing the podcast on all platforms. Or on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube.
Right. Also, before we get started, quick trigger warning. We do talk about all of the triggering subjects, substance abuse, mental health, grief, self-harm. If you can think of it, we talk about it. So by all means, prioritize your own mental space. And if you can't stick around, we completely understand. But assuming that you do, and you absolutely love everything about this podcast, we have a really cool guest today.
Yes.
Alex, not to be confused with Alexandra.
That's correct. Yes. So today is a very proud day for me. I've watched Alex kind of grow up in her sober journey, which has been really good. And we've kind of became friends throughout. It's been kind of neat watching the whole journey of somebody, which is very rare. You get to see that. So let's please welcome my good friend, Alex Kern, to the show. Hey, Alex, how are you?
Alex.
Guys, Ryan, I was thinking about when you said you've watched me grown up, and I think about my early shares, even like most current shares, where I'm just sobbing uncontrollably. And every time Ryan reaches out to me, be like, "Hey, you okay? Like, reach out to me if you need to." I'm like,
Yeah.
It works. It was so needed.
Well, it's that's part of it, right? I mean, the community is the opposite of addiction. That's what we're told. That's what we're taught, and by God, it works that way, doesn't it?
Works.
Yes, it works if you work it, right?
That's right.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. It's been, like I said, it's been a pleasure to, really watch you grow and evolve from those first sobby shares to, kind of where you're at today. You seem very forthright in your sobriety. This is what you want to do. But let's go back to before you've made that decision, before you joined Reframe. Was it a lot of events that kind of led up to your change in relationship with alcohol? Was it one event? Kind of give us your backstory on that as to when sobriety kicked in.
I grew up, I don't know, in a perfect life, I think you could say. Dad is a doctor. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. I have 2 sisters, one older. She's 13 years older than I am, and then a younger sister who's 18 months younger. I really only have nice memories of my childhood, which is fortunate. I mean, there's so many people that we hear every day, Ryan, and Jessica, I know you're on the app too, that don't have that same advantage. And I was really ambitious. I was diagnosed, I was one of probably the first people diagnosed with ADHD at 6 years old. I'm 41 now. And I think that kind of gave me a superpower in that I was really good at almost everything. But what that also did was I put so much pressure on me to be the best. And that was even at a young, at 5 when I started playing soccer. And if I didn't score the most goals, I was like, pretty hard on myself. I continued swimming and playing soccer through college, swam at a little Division III school called John Carroll University in Cleveland, Ohio, Jesuit school. And outside of, when that's over, you're like, what am I now? Who am I? And I had this such intense, insane identity crisis because of that, and because my whole life I thought I was going to be a doctor or a lawyer. because my dad is a doctor, my sister is a lawyer. And so I started working at a law firm and started applying to law schools and taking the LSATs, and I did great. But then the longer I worked in that environment, the more I didn't like it. And I know we have a bunch of lawyers on Reframe and probably in your audience. I certainly don't want to offend anybody, but that was my experience. I was like, these people seem fucking miserable, so I am not going to do that. So I continued as a paralegal for actually 14 years. And my drinking didn't really get bad until my late 20s, when I was kind of still struggling with the identity piece and dating. I would, by default, have 2 tall boy natural lights right before a date. Just chug them. Yeah, I know.
That's like a pre-party, right?
Exactly, like in my car, unfortunately. And people would be like, wow, that's so impressive. And now I think to myself, that was so disgusting. And it got me into a lot of trouble as far as like promiscuity, sleeping with people I didn't want to sleep with. I mean, it didn't stop with those 2 drinks, right? It stopped when I was passed out. And I think to myself a lot of times, like, I'm lucky that something worse didn't happen to me, as far as that goes. And I always kind of thought, well, this is just what 20-year-olds do. And I found myself, even into my early 30s, found myself blacking out every time I drank. No, and it was no matter what or how much, I was blacking out. And that's kind of when this switch went off in my mind, that I was like, this cannot be normal. I see people drinking 1 drink right in front of me, and surely they're not blacking out. So that's kind of when I became sober curious, and I started giving alcohol up for Lent. And that was kind of like my first stint with sustained sobriety. And that was, early 30s. But, I was surviving then. I was surviving, and I was growing, and I felt okay. I felt functional. And I don't really love that word, but I think most people understand what I mean when I say that. So then my husband and I were engaged, and I went to the OB, and I told her that we were ready to start thinking about having babies. And she ran the tests. And I hadn't had my period in a year at that point. And so I was like, what the heck is wrong with me? And they diagnosed me with premature ovarian failure, meaning I had no eggs. And, I was 35 years old, getting engaged, getting married in 5 months. And that's blew my mind. So we ran right into the IVF stuff, and it was so overwhelming. We didn't really have any money for that. So we used credit cards. We used credit cards, and insurance doesn't cover it. So luckily or unluckily, we didn't have any sort of reaction. I didn't have any. We did all the medication, none of the eggs grew. So it was called a no response cycle. That was in October of 2019. So I got married in September 2019. We had that failed IVF cycle, October 2019. We moved into our house, October 2019. And then we have the pandemic in March of 2020. My husband gets laid off. It was just like everybody, just like I had no control over anything. But the one thing I could control was what I put into my body, and that was alcohol. And it kept getting worse and worse. until we got pregnant in June of 2020. So it's like, what the heck is going on here, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, with completely unmedicated, just spontaneous ovulation, wild. So I was I wasn't actually sober during my entire pregnancy. I read this book, and I can't remember what it's called, but essentially, she's an economist, and she basically gives data for what you can and can't do. And it was like, I feel kind of ashamed, but it was basically like, you can have 5 drinks a week and your baby will turn out just fine. And so I did. And I think I'm lucky. I also ate lunch meat. I like all these things that she said that people say you can't do. She said they're okay, just not in large quantities. So I was like, all right, you're the expert. I will follow this to a T. My daughter Lily is perfect, thank God. And so I wouldn't necessarily take any of her advice ever again, especially because I'm sober, but I guess it worked out fine. So during the pandemic, I then pivoted into a marketing role, which was very event heavy. I also had postpartum depression. And so the heavy party scene mixed with the postpartum led to even more drinking, blacking out all the time in a professional setting, which, I would wake up in the mornings after thinking like, who the hell did I talk to? What the hell did I say to them? And I would have to pretend the next day that I knew what I said, because that's the only way you can kind of pretend like everything's okay. And then I think the most traumatic event was that I started this neurosurgery group with my best friend, and ultimately was accused of doing some things that I did not do, and was fired from that job, which was my baby. We started it from the ground up, and that is when I started using drinking as my only coping mechanism. I've said before on meetings, I didn't drink to numb. I drank to completely avoid. Like, I would drink when I woke up until I went to bed so that I could just sleep. Like, I drank to sleep the whole day because I didn't know what was next. Again, I had no control. And so there's a theme, right? The less control I feel like I have, the more I go to something I can control, which is what I put into my body. And I remember my husband saying to me one day, and this was July 2023, so it is relatively, it's not, 10 years ago, it's just 2 years ago. Al, I've never seen you like this. I've never seen you so down and so out. And because I felt like, again, my whole identity was just smashed because I was let go from this job and these people that I loved. And I had no idea what I was going to do because I had just pivoted into sales and marketing, and I didn't really know anybody. So I just had to kind of crawl out of that hole. And I had actually downloaded Reframe in January of 2022. And I don't think that they had meetings then. I use it as a drink counter, every January. And I was like, F this, I want to drink. So just like put that in my back pocket. But then last June, I had another traumatic career move. They eliminated my position as a director of clinical services at another medical practice after I came home from my 40th birthday trip. And I was like, I cannot go back to where I was. I cannot go back to what I was doing to numb and avoid that I was doing for the past 2 years. So I found Reframe. and I actually started digging around in the app and found the meetings, and Static was one of my first meetings, and I was like, who's this guy? Like, who he seems mean, but like he's the kindest person you will ever meet on a meeting. I mean, his heart is so big, but I really side-eyed him and mostly everyone else those first few days. And then, just hearing I just knew that my daughter deserved more from me than she was getting. There were times, and I'm sure you've heard me say this in a meeting, that I didn't remember putting her to bed. And that was absolutely not okay with me anymore. And I just wanted to be an example for her that this isn't really how you deal with things. Like, you deal with things by picking yourself up and taking control of your life, not letting something control it. So that's how I'm here. I'm blessed. I hope
That's
that
fantastic.
was a good synopsis.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Perfect. First of all, to kind of go back to where you were talking about drinking during your pregnancy, no need for the shame. We set shame on fire on this podcast. And there have been many, many mothers who have been guests who have talked about, being bamboozled by a society that tells them, oh, mommy wine culture, or it's okay to have, a glass of wine here, or 5 drinks a week, or any of those things.
It was even to the point where I credited my daughter's, I don't like easy versus hard, but I guess like she's super stable. She's super calm. She's always been the little girl who's like, okay, whatever. I credited that not to me and how I've raised her, but to the wine I drank during pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
yeah,
no, it's me and my husband.
Yeah.
But that all goes back to just insecurities in drinking too, right? Like on some subconscious level, you're like, well, that couldn't have been me. There has to be some sort of like external force at work here, because when I'm in control of my decisions, I make bad decisions. So there's no way that I could have made a good one.
I also think that I needed an excuse. An excuse to be able to drink like that during my pregnancy.
We're definitely seeing a movement of women talking about this too. We've had multiple guests on the podcast. Some of them have aired, some of them haven't. And the moms talk about really deconstructing this. We call it a mommy wine culture for lack of a better phrase. But again, like you said earlier about something, everybody knows what that means. And breaking those stigmas. The reason that we don't know if it's safe to take certain medicines is because women aren't diagnosed. Mm-hmm. We're just loud and bitchy and, unruly. We're just too much. We talk too much. We're too loud. We're too opinionated. And so, like, I'm ADHD as well. I'm ADHD. I'm OCD. I have generalized anxiety disorder. And I wasn't diagnosed until I was about 35. And I was not hyperactive as a child, right? So my mom kept us in activities constantly, but I didn't have that hyperactivity. But mine was more the internal, like, mental exhaustion of it all. And I remember when my provider told me, she's like, I really think you're ADHD. And I just laughed. I was like, no, like, I'm not hyper. If anything, like, I just want to go to bed. I just want to go to bed.
Did you feel like it was embarrassing, or like you didn't want to be part of that stigma?
I felt like a lot of people so like I said, I'll be 40. So we'll say about 5 years ago, I felt like that was the beginning of, everybody self-diagnosing ADHD because TikTok was on the rise and it was during the pandemic and everybody was like Dr. Google. And again, I'm the same. Like, I think that technology and social media and all those things, AI, I'm a huge proponent of being smart about these things. And I think it's great to have access to so much information. But I think that when left to your own devices and not really taught how to navigate those tools, it like anything else, it's dangerous, right? So oh no, you
Sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
For me, growing up diagnosed as a child with ADHD and then going through college and watching so many people misuse the medication drove me crazy. I was like, because that's when these it became so hard to get. There became more rules. You could only get it once a month. You had to go to the pharmacy. You couldn't mail it out. You could only get 60 or 30, whatever. And I would just watch these people take what I want, like what I really needed. But I think to your point is like people diagnosing themselves and then trying to medicate in a way that wasn't, with a doctor.
Well, right. And for me, when I would tell people, when I really started talking about it and being like, I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, I would get the, everybody's ADHD. I'm like, no. And I feel like, and even now I'm like, feel like I have to validate, I have a provider who I've seen for years and I always feel like I have to give this backstory. Like, no. Like I saw this provider because I was struggling with anxiety and mental health and my husband was at his worst in the drinking and all these other things. I know. And I'll stop myself and I'm like, I don't know you a fucking explanation. Yes, I'm ADHD and you can go fuck yourself. Like, I don't know you.
For me, I hate saying it's a superpower because I've really struggled. But if I put my mind to something, I'm going to fucking do it.
Yes.
And I'm going to do it from start to finish, which is also not great because if I don't think I can finish it, I'm not going to start it.
Yeah,
thank you. That's the first person I've heard. So, most people who are ADHD, they love like adult coloring books and puzzles and stuff. And I get it because when I hyper focus on something, it's to the point where it'll be 3-4 o'clock in the morning and I'm focusing on something very small, right? But I don't like adult coloring books. I don't like puzzles because I see it as this big task. And number one, with ADHD, figuring out where to start is the hardest part about beginning a task. And everybody's like, oh, that's for everybody. I'm like, no, like we will stand there and stare at something for hours without moving because we want to do the thing. But right now it's just everything. And so I don't like those because I'm thinking, if I start this, I'm like, we're married. Like I'm in it. I'm in it to win it. And I'm not going to stop. So it's funny. And this is such a dumbed down example, but it's so relatable. Like, so we have a couple like shows like Below Deck and stuff like that, like stupid reality shows that we love to watch. Right. Anybody out there listening, if you don't like reality shows, yes, you do. Shut the fuck up. Yes, you do. Right. You do like them. Okay. Everybody likes them. Okay. So we'll sit down and, we're watching a show and he'll like pause it and then he'll press play and I'll say, what are you doing? He's like, well, I was seeing how much is left. Why don't we go finish this in the bedroom? You want to stop the show in the middle and get up and go get ready for bed. No, we're not doing that. And he's like, I'm tired. I said, well, you shouldn't have pressed play. Don't start the next episode. We're done. You press play on the next episode. We are watching it to completion. And we don't ever argue about it, but that's like a perfect example of a relatable thing. Like for me, if I'm being honest, like, no, I'm not going to stop this episode. Like we're not stopping in the middle.
You cannot stop me because then I will never get back to it again. Ever.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's what I told him too. Yeah. I said, if I don't finish this, I'm not going to come back to it. And we have little things like that too, where he's like, just honey, it's fine. just leave it and we'll do it later. I'm like, that's not, nope, that's a foreign concept for me.
And then, and being in all these meetings and, all the different types that they have and listening to people's experience, I've seen so much of the ADHD tendencies in my husband. I mean, if you could see my backyard, right? I'm like, okay, he's unmedicated. And I also think his is trauma-based, but, but our backyard, there are 5 projects going on. And I watched him yesterday, like, we're putting in a big fire pit with rocks. And so I saw him like dig a little around the pit, and then he went to go weed whack the fence, and then he went to go spray down the driveway. And I'm like, oh my God, finish one. Finish one.
Yeah, he does that too. And he'll say like, he'll come out and he'll ask me like 3 to 5 questions back to back to back, and then go somewhere. And I'll stop him and I'm like, you realize you just asked me like 5 questions and then scurried off to go do something else. And then you come back and you're like, are you going to answer my question? I'm like, are you going to like sit down? And it is. And I think that just like everything else, we're realizing it's on a spectrum, right? And it doesn't present the same. Like we had this conversation last night, the word laziness. So I have a very like unpopular opinion about this. I personally don't think that laziness is an actual real thing if you dig all the way deep into it. So what someone else perceives as lazy is another person's internal struggle or a history of them succumbing to whatever it is. And I won't go off on that because that's like a whole, right, or systemic or whatever. And so for the longest time before I was medicated, and he was in the thick of his drinking, so you can imagine like an unmedicated, trauma-based ADHD, OCD, neurodivergent, generalized anxiety, raging blackout, alcoholic, like nuclear bomb, right? So it would be him coming home from out of town, working and drinking every night and gambling, and then coming home to a house that looks the exact same way as it did before he left. And we're not that couple that he's like, you cook and clean and I go to work. And me just looking so drained and exhausted. And he's like, what the fuck did you do the whole time I was gone? And I'm like, And it is an explosion because I'm exhausted. And he's like, what are you tired from? You haven't done anything. And it was only after we both did the inner work that he realizes like just that, like in my head, the laundry's done. It is folded and put away. Like all of these things that I really want to do, or going to work, or I'm making it like household stuff, but like I was working full time as well. They're already done, but I cannot get my body to do the things. And so it is a perpetual cycle.
That's, I see that a lot in my husband. And I'll also say that as my drinking has decreased, is no longer existent, his has truly escalated. And so has his depression and anxiety. As we know, that's what happens. And it is hard. I really struggle with like that same kind of thing. Jessica saying like, I was gone for 3 weeks. I came home. We have a hole in our ceiling because of all the rain we've been getting in Georgia. And the minute I walked in, I smelled mold. And I was like, what's going on here? And I was angry that I had to be the one to smell it and then identify it. But he's so down that there's no figuring that out. And it has been a real struggle. I think that Ryan, you probably can relate. Both of you probably can relate to this, but I'm ambitious and I'm motivated and I'm like, no one's gonna fucking stop me. nothing's going to win but me. And to see him so dejected and sad and doesn't have that same ability to pick himself up and say, this isn't going to beat me, has been really hard. And it's not, and even if he does make progress, that it's not as fast as the progress I've made. Mm-hmm. It's been really difficult to sit back and watch.
Mm-hmm. So we've actually both been in that situation with each other. So one of the things that we used to argue about a lot and butt heads was we're both, I hate this term, but like we're both alphas, right? Like, don't touch my things. Don't tell me what to do. Why are you asking me where I am? All of these. And it's not that we have anything to hide. It's just we're both, because of our childhoods, just hyper independent people, right? Like, don't ask for help. Don't expect anything to be given. That's just who we are. So I started my mental health journey before he started getting sober. And we've talked about this before on the podcast, so I won't go into super detail, but it was kind of that same thing. I was in that cycle, and I would get so mad at him for coming home and yelling at me. And it just got to this point where I was like, okay, the only thing that can change is I can only change me. So I have to figure out why I am in this cycle. And I can't keep sitting around saying, oh my gosh, poor pitiful me, my husband's an alcoholic. I didn't want to leave my marriage. I decided to stay. And so I saw a provider, started therapy, and started doing those things. And I started making changes, got medicated, which helped me immensely, and doing all of these things, no matter what he was doing, like whether he went out drinking, whether he was gambling, no matter what he was doing. And that, I understand what you're saying there, because that really frustrated me, because I was like, I'm doing all these things. I'm making all these changes and I'm gaining clarity. Like I used to drink with him a ton. Like, you know, I had a problem with alcohol. Just because I didn't black out, or just because I didn't drink every single day, or just because it wasn't my main source of dependency does not mean that I didn't have a problem with alcohol. And I would smoke weed and numb out. You know, it's amazing how much better your medication and therapy works whenever you're not like smoking weed and drinking, you know?
Well, that's another thing, Jessica. I've been in therapy almost my whole life. Again, like my mom didn't know what to do with me, and so she psychologist shopped until she found someone that agreed with her.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will say though that the last year, so I say that to say that I've been in therapy my entire life, but it isn't until the last year that I've actually gotten anything out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Being sober.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being, you know, not thinking that I had to perform in front of this therapist, and pretend that I was okay. You know, I got the most out of it when I wasn't okay and I didn't pretend to be.
I know. I remember the first time I went to my provider and I was like, I feel horrible. I'm sad all the time. I'm crying. Like, I'm so anxious. And I was like, I just feel like I'm like everything in my life, like I'm doing all the things and everything's good. Nothing's wrong, but I just feel so overwhelmed. And she was like, good job. I said, what are you talking about? She's like, you're not, that's good. Like you're feeling it. And I know you have something to say, but the flip side of that is when he got sober, you know, I was 3 years into my mental health stuff. And I guess where he had been drinking to sort of numb out everything, but to ignore what I was doing too, because his drinking got worse the better I got, because it just, you know, I wasn't doing all the things with him anymore. And then he got sober, and it was like when you get sober, all of a sudden you literally see things that have been in front of you all the time that you don't see anymore. And he started really noticing my journey, but part of my journey was allowing myself space, right? Allowance for my mental health, saying, I'm not going to sit around and not do all the things all week. But if I'm struggling and having a bad day, and no matter how much therapy or medication, those days are going to happen, I'm going to allow myself 24 hours to sit in the bed and read or feel sorry for myself and then get the hell out of the bed. Because that's important too. But because he was just awakening to this, he didn't realize I had already worked myself up to being able to manage that. So he's like, what is wrong with you? Let's get up. Let's go work out. Cause he was all like in this. So it flipped and it took him a while to understand that too. So we've both been there.
That in one of your podcasts. And when I wasn't working the beginning of last June, well, it was like all of May, the beginning of last June in 2024, I had to tell my husband like that I can't, he expected me to be the housewife. He has dinner on the table when he walks home, and that's just not how I am.
Me neither.
Anyway, but I had to tell him initially, like, the only thing that I can do today is not drink. It's the only thing I can commit to. I cannot commit to doing the laundry. I cannot commit. I'm going to go to the pool and I'm going to not drink. So it's either that or we continue this terrible cycle that I so desperately want out of.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to circle back to was, when you talked about, you got sober and unfortunately his, everything with him just really started amping up. So how has that been for you navigating that, for over a year now where, every day it's, you're doing the work, you're putting in the work to stay sober every day, but your partner, you're seeing that escalate or still using in front of you. How has that been navigating that for over a year now?
Tough. For two reasons, maybe more. I know what being alcohol free feels like. I know the freedom that you can get with it. And I see, so that's the first part of it. Like, there's no downside to being alcohol free, truly. I also see his health declining. He doesn't look the way he did a year ago. I think his eyes are going bad. He's now like squinting. If I'm 41, he's only 32. So he catfished me, by the way. But anyway, his eyes, I feel like, should not be that bad. And he just doesn't feel good and he's not taking care of himself. And so, he gets up for work every day. He's got a great job. But I just know how much better it can be, and it makes me so sad to watch. And so, as far as me wanting to drink because he is, that's not a thing. Me trying to push maybe too hard to get him over here, that is a thing that happens. And I am really bad with boundaries. That's something that I work on every day. I've had to learn that boundaries don't mean ultimatums. And, I think I hear it all the time in our meetings that, when the dynamic in the partnership changes, i.e. one person stops drinking, everything shifts because that's what we're used to. And I think there's just a period of relearning that is happening and will continue to happen. I'm committed to my marriage as far and as much as I can be, as it remains a safe place for me to be, and my daughter. But I continue to do what I have to do. I know that it's more sobriety and being alcohol free is more on his mind than it ever has been. I'm doing a lot of things that he's proud of, and I don't ask him to be alcohol free. I just want him to live a life that he can be proud of.
Yeah, and I think that's great because you're leading by example, I think, and to me that's the best thing you can do because I know at the height of mine and really kind of throughout our whole marriage, Jessica had noticed in me many times, hey, you got a problem here. And, you know, she didn't come out and say it or give me an ultimatum or anything.
Oh, I said it. It was always just in the middle of an argument.
Yes. And it was one of those things that was always in the back of my mind. And I'm like, fuck that. I don't have a problem, you know, but until you realize you have a problem, because we all, you know, we all did or do at one time. And then when it's when you mentally realize it and take ownership of it where things change. But, you know, someone telling you, hey, you've got this issue, whatever, until you realize that it doesn't matter. And, you know, it's like, you know, I did a stint in rehab before. I've gone to AA meetings. I can do it standing on my head. Anybody, I think, really could if they had to do it. It's, you know, doing the work once you get into it and realizing you've got a problem, nothing's going to change.
Well, okay. So to that point, because I think, you know, a lot of people see us on the podcast now, and our lives over the past 6 years, I mean, we don't resemble who we were before.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a lot of feedback about like, oh, you guys are a great couple, this, that, or another. But I mean, it's almost like, you know, like, what am I trying to say? I want to say Scrooge, because that's what I think. Charles Dickens, you know, like I want to take everybody on like to the past, you know what I mean?
I don't.
Be able to, but I do.
I sure as fuck don't.
I know that you don't. But I mean, like, just like hovering and looking to say, like, I really don't think people would believe it. And it's not to, I hate, this sounds mean. It's not to give anybody hope or anything like that, because we don't want to be an example. But it's very reminiscent of your current situation. Like, Ryan, when I started my mental health journey and really broke away and was like, this is not that I didn't care what you were doing, but you know how it is. You have to separate yourself and say, and you did the same thing when you got sober, no matter what, anything else around me is going on. I've made the decision. I'm not going to leave my marriage. Same, as long as I'm safe, and safety was never an issue, but I'm not going to leave. So then what do I do with that? Okay. I can't change over here, so I'm going to change me. When did you start to notice that something was changing? And I'm sure you were proud of me for doing the work, but, you know, I'm sure with your husband, there's like this double-edged sword where you're proud, but it also highlights what you're doing. And that's like a difficult thing.
I'll say that I was just on the news for a reframe thing, and which was super exciting for me. And my husband mentioned how proud he was, and he really is. And I know that he wants some of this too. So to your point, like, I'm over here doing everything I need to do for me, right? And ultimately us, because we can't have two of those drinkers anymore. That's a commitment I made, for the rest of my life. And so I know it's in his ear. He sees me, he hears me. And you can't, until he's ready, I can't do anything about it.
Right.
So,
and that's difficult too.
One more thing that, in meetings, I hear all the time that it's these women who stop drinking and then have the same issues with their husbands all the time. And it's always the question of, do I stay or do I leave? And I think, and I was there. I mean, Ryan, you know, I was there, and I read, the 4 Agreements, and I stopped letting his actions, I stopped taking what he was doing personally. It has nothing to do with me. Nothing.
That you're dead on the money right there. Yep.
It's about him and him only. It's not, it's not about me. So the moment, it's still hard, granted, but once I was able to actually live that, it became so much easier for me not to internalize that. I mean, because before that, it was like, how come you can't do this for me or your daughter? Well, because you can't. Like, no one can do anything for anyone else. So And I tell the lady,
Yeah, you have to 100% do it.
Yep, you hit it on the head. The pivotal moment for me was when I started therapy and my therapist looked at me and I was like in there and I was crying and I was like, because that's where we all start. And that's totally valid too. Like I said, I have my moments where I'm like, today's going to be a shitty day and I'm going to allow myself to feel sorry for myself. And I'll even look at it and I'm like, I'm feeling sorry for myself and I'm living in my victimhood today. Okay. So you enter at your own risk. But it's because I've gotten to the point in, right. Like you have to be self-aware enough. And that's the trick too, is you get to a point in your journey where you're like, today, just nothing's going to work, but I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to binge eat. I'm not going to whatever it is. So I'm just going to sit in the bed and feel sorry for myself. And tomorrow I'll be a brand new person and that's okay. But my pivotal moment was my therapist looked at me, I'm crying, I'm in the victimhood, I'm doing all the things, which that's where we all start. That is completely fine and acceptable. And she was like, okay, so are you planning on divorcing your husband? Like, do we need to talk about what that's going to look like and navigating your daughter and all this? And I said, no, I don't want to do that. She said, okay, that's fine. So then you're staying. Okay. So then what we need to do is just work on like what your personal goals are and how to be able to stay in your relationship and love your husband and provide space, but also have healthy boundaries for what you need. And I know that sounds so basic, but that was the first time anybody had looked at me and just said, just which path? And then we're going to figure out a plan and I'm going to give you tools and resources to use to walk that path rather than, oh my gosh, girl, you need to leave or, oh, marriage, you need to be committed. You need to help him. It was always one side or the other, which that's where we pull. But nobody had ever looked at me and just been like, it's your decision whether you stay or go. That's not the part. It's
I'm taking that out of it.
What are you doing for you? Mm-hmm. Yep. Like this isn't really about your marriage. I'm not a marriage counselor. Like if your husband was here with you and you guys are wanting to work on your marriage, that's fine. But like you're in front of me. We're talking about you. I'm not here to tell you to leave your husband. Like this isn't about your marriage. This is about you. And that was the first time. Same thing with him when he got sober and he talks about this. I'm sure you've heard Alex on meetings. Like, it's not that he always says, I didn't care what happened. And it's not that you don't care what happens. Of course you care. Of course you care. But no matter what happens in the world, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to get. And it's important for my survival. And the people who are with me at the end, that's wonderful and awesome. But if you're not, I get it too. Yeah. I get it. Nobody is required to forgive you or forget. And I see that too. Like a lot of performative action. It wasn't performative this last time. He was like, if you divorce me tomorrow, I get it. No animosity, no anger, but I'm still going to be over here doing my thing.
Well,
and you have to be there.
On the meetings too, is that, these women who are sober, trying to become alcohol free, we kind of expect our partners to come along with and at the same pace. And it just, until one of my reframe friends, I'm going to name drop her because I love her so much and she'll love this, Denise, said, there's no timeline. There's no like, if you're committed to doing this together, what's the rush, right? Mm-hmm. Because the minute I start rushing him or myself is the minute things spiral. And that put a lot of perspective into my heart because if like I said, if we're committed to spending our entire lives together, then this year where we're trying to figure out both of our sobriety, we're going to get there. There's not an option, but we can just do it differently.
Yeah. Right. And I think you will. And it's, it's like we see everybody's journey path, whatever you want to talk about it, it's never linear and they're never the same.
No.
Right. Everybody's got a different starting point, right? Or a different end point, whatever it is. But when you see somebody, especially in a relationship, when you see somebody constantly leveling up their life, you want a piece of it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you're motivated, not motivated, whatever. When you see your partner continually leveling up and their life gets better, which I have never heard anybody in sobriety tell me how shitty their life got after they quit drinking.
Amen. I love that.
And when you see them constantly leveling up and things changing, and all of a sudden you become proud of that person, you're like, God, I want a taste of that. I want that life. That's when the wheels start turning.
Is that how you felt?
Yeah, I felt you leveling up, and I'm still down here. Not only am I down here, I'm leveling down more and more when I want to be up here with you, or I want to go higher than you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens. And that's where the leading by example really takes shape, because, you know, with you, I see you leveling up and things getting better in your life, and you're not giving a shit about things. And I'm like, well, fuck, I want that. You know, I want that clarity. And then, you know, eventually the wheels start turning. It's like, okay, well, what do I need to change in my life to get there? And then you realize there's one common denominator, which, you know, I hear all the time. It comes back to, it's the alcohol that caused you to do X, Y, Z. You eliminate that, you eliminate X, Y, Z, and then things just start getting better.
And what it is too, you hit it on the head. You're like, she's doing this and not caring about it. Right. Because that's the key.
That is the key. I mean, because you're worried about yourself and taking care of you.
Right. And again, it's not that you don't care about everything. It's more of
I'm going to control what's in my area, not what's outside of it.
And I'm still going to be over here doing this. Like, and we've talked about too, like I would go out to dinner or whatever and spend $25, you know, something stupid. And he would yell at me. And before it would just make me, just full transparency, I maxed out all my credit cards because I was like, I don't want Ryan to be mad at me. And that shifted from, I'm no longer going to put shit on my credit cards. I'm just going to pay for stuff, because the only time we've been financially stupid was in like mental health crises, right? Like we're not out like, you know, I'm not out buying 20 Chanel bags, but, it just got to the point where I'd swipe the card. Yeah. He's like, thanks. And then if he got mad, I would just let him get mad. People, you know, they're like, I mean, I still was nervous. I still would pick up my credit card, but it just took many things of going, no. What's he going to do? Yell at me? Right. Okay. And I mean, and again, this is talking about like, there are some people in abusive relationships. I was never worried my husband was going to come home drunk and like beat me. Okay. Right. So we're talking about very generalized things here. But I think the reason that our story sticks out to people, and what a lot of people don't see because we've only recently started sharing it, is we both independently from one another got better. Right? Like,
and definitely not at the same time.
And not at the same time at all.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so Fletcher and I do couples therapy, and it's great. I mean, I think she saved our marriage more than once. And it gives us a great opportunity to communicate, which is something we're really bad at outside of therapy. But again, we're not healing. You can't heal together. You can heal at the same time, but not in the same way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I feel like couples therapy is all about learning how to, like, I mean, it is about, you have this person and this person, and you're projecting your feelings onto each other. And it's like just an endless game of ping pong. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's like a game you can't win. But I agree. That was something else my therapist said. She's like, listen, couples therapy, marriage counseling is great. It saves so many marriages. But the times that it is, the only way that it is truly, truly, truly ultimately successful overall is you have to have this person in their own individual therapy and counseling, and this person doing the same. And then you take those nuggets and then you come together in your marriage counseling to learn how to communicate what you're learning and feeling in a safe, controlled environment. Because I know on this podcast, we look like we communicate well, but in the wild, are you kidding?
No. You need to just always pretend, like get in your podcast chairs, turn on the mics, and just pretend like you're.
Well, it's funny. I tell a lot of people this helped us out in our marriage more than anything, because, you know, before, you know, we would have guests and that we just sat and talked. And, we could sit here for a couple hours and just bullshit about old stuff and talking, when in reality we're kind of talking through our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just everybody can hear it.
Right.
And that's been an incredible change for us. It's almost like we can get some of our old shit out now instead of bringing it up, later on, which I think's been really cool.
Yeah, I'm sure you learn something about each other every day.
Yeah, it's been great.
However many times.
Some of it's great.
Well,
sometimes I learn things and I'm like, we could have kept that in the memory bank until the day we died.
Edit that out.
Well,
I regularly look at him and I'm like, not everything that pops into your head needs to come out of your mouth.
Yeah, that's true. Well, speaking of learning things, there is one thing I want to learn about you that I wouldn't know, is I want you to go back to your old drinking days, and I want you to give us a good old drinking story. And if it involves pee, that's a beautiful thing, and you know this because you've listened to the podcast.
It's a beautiful thing. I mean, there were so many times that I would. So I live in Atlanta. There's a lot of parking decks. The parking decks are very high and very long. I would just pee in the parking decks. I mean, no, I couldn't even fathom driving down the parking deck to get to a gas station to pee. So it was just like I would open up my door to kind of try to hide myself and squat down and pee.
So you were a serial squatter, huh?
Yeah, I mean, serial squatter.
But, girls pee all over their legs and their shoes and their socks. And so that's the thing about peeing with girls is you might as well do it in the open.
The whole thing, I'm sure that my butt is on camera all over the place, probably on the internet. But yeah, I mean, I feel like boys' pee stories are more wild because y'all it's a different.
Just whip it out.
Mechanism.
And you don't care anything about it, like you. And I also feel like guys go into like in any restroom, you guys are just whipping it out and peeing, and you guys see each other's junk all the time.
So weird to me.
Like with girls, it's not like we just have a bunch of toilets and we're like, "What's up?" I mean, it's private. So for us, when we pee, it's a whole thing, and then you got to like squat, and then I don't know about anybody else, but if you don't have something to wipe with, you do the like that's really gonna do anything. It doesn't.
Right. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it.
There is a lot of thought, which you can't think when you're drunk, right? So it never ends up well. I have more like good falling stories, like tripping, falling, bruises, clumsy.
Me.
I
hate that you are falling all over the place. It seems dangerous.
It's my ADHD. I am clumsy.
I've heard a lot of those.
I run in
clumsiness.
I mean, that's part of my ADHD though, is at any given moment, like I can't tell you how many times I've had huge bruises on my legs, and he's like, "God damn, like what is that?" I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I ran into something.
Your story is the hotel room one, right?
That's one of them.
Oh, that's one of them. But the last one we did on my 2 years was great. That was on the cruise ship, where I thought I was.
That was a falling story.
Yeah, that was a good falling story. I thought I was Lord of the Dance during one of those a silent disco.
But you know how when most people
and I
fall,
was on my back like a turtle,
but when
I
most
couldn't
people
get
fall,
up.
though, it's like a bend and fall. His was literally like a weeble wobble, like flat, just down.
The end of that episode, I got to go back and listen.
Oh yeah, it's a good one.
It's a good one.
Thanks for having me, y'all. That was so fun.
Alex, thank you so much. Yeah, it's okay.
We just have to bring you back.
Just have to bring you back at a later date.
Alex, part 2.
More stuff.
Yes.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
I felt, I do want to say that I'm so incredibly humbled that you reached out. I feel like there's been so many amazing people that I've grown up with as far as my sobriety, and I'm so honored to be part of one of your guests. Truly.
Well, and one of the things, and Jessica and I talked about this, as the podcast has really grown, right? And we've brought on and they haven't even aired yet. I mean, some really big guests. We still want to stick with our roots, which is our community,
Right.
Which to me is very important. And people that, and still today, I watch these people as they grow, and we reach out to each other and check on each other. It's great to have them come on and tell their story and be raw and real about it, because people that listen to the podcast are fighting similar battles that you and I fought. So it's great.
Well, we always want to give people a platform. I mean, and of course, like big guests and with lots of followers or notoriety, that's wonderful. I mean, people follow them for a reason. But at the same time, I want real people, non-influencers, just people in sobriety telling that story.
How you get more traction is because it's the same thing as people sharing in a reframe meeting. We're all doing the same thing. We've just gotten here different ways.
Yeah, exactly.
And we want people to take what resonates and leave the same. Like some people may listen and be like, oh, I don't really get that. If you feel like, for anybody listening, if you feel like you're alone, whether it be alcohol, mental health, self-harm, intrusive thoughts, like, no, you are not fucking alone. There are literally millions of people out there thinking, feeling, and doing the same things. Like, no one is alone. And having people like you on this podcast to talk and resonate with people,
that's all about.
That's what it's about.
When are you guys coming down here for a Braves game?
Soon, I hope. Very soon.
I'm down. Right. I'll just get in the car and I'll come. You'll be like,
not that far.
And I'll be like, I don't know. I don't even know that he knows I'm gone. I just
you just do your own thing.
That's right.
Pretty much.
All right, Alex. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
If you love the podcast, which I know you do, please like, subscribe,
and hit that notification bell to get notified every time we post.
That's right. Dropping them, baby. Word.